Secret Space, NASA, ETs, and the Vatican. This is by Joseph P. Farrell, PhD. NASA, it seems, is hiring theologians to help it determine what to do in case we encounter them out there in the future. But with NASA, I notice a distinct tendency in the choice and selection, one that suggests to me that NASA is far more intent on controlling a narrative with the Vatican's help than it is exploring any really deep theological argued answers to its question. NASA, ET, and the Vatican by Joseph Farrell. He says, I'm taking an odd chance today to blog about a story that caught my eye over the Christmas break and that I had fully intended to blog about. And then the heart attack happened, but I still want to blog about it. As I mentioned, I will do as many blogs a week as I'm capable. That may add up to 0 or 7, I don't know, he says. Today, at least, I have a little residual energy, so here we go. Many of you noticed the story, and it passed it along, so I'd like to thank all of you for doing so. What's the story? NASA, it seems, is hiring theologians to help determine what to do in case we encounter them out there in the future, but there's a catch, and it makes me very skeptical. NASA is looking to the heavens for help. Agency enlisted 24 theologians to assess how the world would react to the discovery of extraterrestrial space aliens, alien life on distant planets, and how it might change our perception of God and creation. Note that one theologian is a biochemist and not a theologian. Reverend Dr. Andrew Davidson, priest and theologian at the University of Cambridge with a doctorate in biochemistry from Oxford. And another is a Jesuit astronomer, though not mentioned as part of NASA's panel. In 2008, the Vatican chief astronomer says there is no conflict between believing in God and in the possibility of extraterrestrial brothers, quote unquote. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box. So these extraterrestrial brothers, perhaps more evolved than humans. He said, in my opinion, this possibility of life on other planets exists, said Reverend Jose Gabriel Funes, a 45-year-old Jesuit priest who is head of the Vatican Observatory and a scientific advisor to Pope Benedict. How can we exclude that life has developed elsewhere, he told the Vatican newspaper L'Osservatore Romano in an interview, and explaining that the large number of galaxies with their own planets made this possible. Asked if he was referring to beings similar to humans or even more evolved than humans, he said, certainly in a universe this big, you can't exclude this hypothesis. And then finally, we have the usual bow to an American Baptist to remind people of just how backwards those confessions are. Brother Mueller, president of Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, said in a 2008 interview, when asked if there are such things as aliens, he said, the answer is no, that's speculative. He said, we have no reason to believe there is any other story out there. There's nothing in Scripture that says there cannot be some form of life somewhere, but what we are told is that the cosmos was created in order that on this planet, Jesus Christ in space and time and history would come to save sinful humanity. You'll have noted that the Baptist is, in fact, the only recognizable theologian in the bunch because he likes to talk about standard types of Christian things like the incarnation of God itself, and I disagree profoundly with his take, but nonetheless his take is at least recognizably Christian. But with NASA, I notice a distinct tendency in the choice and selection, one that suggests to me that NASA is far more intent on controlling a narrative with the Vatican's help than it is exploring any really deeply theological argued answers to its questions. Questions like, I don't know, the meaning of the term ousia in physics in dogmatic definitions, and whether or not the essence, ousia is the word for essence in Greek. Ousia and physics, physis is nature, so essence and nature of God in dogmatic definitions, and whether or not they refer to species, phyla, order, and so on, directly related to the question at hand, or whether the ancient microcosm and the cosmological passages of some scripture like Romans 8:19-22 have implications for questions, or how might the Cappadocian Fathers have addressed this question, the early Christian Fathers. My point with all of this is that NASA does not even know such questions or people exist. It has done what the West always does, default to Roman Catholicism for an answer, not realizing that the answer may and probably will change depending on who one asks. This does not mean that there is confusion, but rather nuance, and NASA does not want nuance, and it certainly does not want to confer with the only terrestrial space power out there that not only has a space program, but a church within an equally long tradition as the Vatican. So color me skeptical here. An institution, the papacy, that can justify burning people alive for viewpoints, that can turn its back on its own centuries of liturgical tradition at Vatican II in order to reinforce its claims about itself and gut the faith of millions of its own followers in the process, is not in an institution. I'm inclined to listen to on the matter, especially since NASA does not seem to know how to ask the right questions in the right order. And I used to try to tell my theological students way back when, the right questions in the right order are always crucial to theology. So, any NASA ETs in the Vatican, I'm taking an odd chance today to blog about the story that caught my eye over Christmas break, he says. This is with the Giza Death Star, Real Politics on Out of Mind too. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support.